Yes, you will receive the stimulus check if you owe back taxes. The only exception to owing money where you wouldn't receive the economic impact payment is if you owe back child support. But if you owe, if you have a defaulted student loan and you owe to there, if you owe the state tax agencies, none of that will actually prevent you from receiving the economic impact payment.
You're listening to Law and the Pandemic, a production of UC Hastings Law School and its Center on Legal Technology and Innovation, LexLab. We're your co-hosts. I'm Drew Amerson.
And I'm Arika Smith. Today, we speak with Professor Amy Spivey about the economic impact payments and get answers to many logistical questions related to this and the IRS more generally. Professor Spivey joined UC Hastings Law earlier this year as a visiting assistant professor and clinic director for the school's Low-Income Taxpayer Clinic.
Professor Spivey, welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. We asked you to speak to us because we're really curious about the stimulus checks. I understand that more than half of the eligible Americans have already received their checks, but that means that there are tens of millions of Americans who haven't gotten the money yet. So let me open by asking you on behalf of all those people, where's the money?
Yeah, so there's a couple reasons you may not have received your check yet. One of them, main reason is you haven't filed your tax return yet for 2019 or 2018. Certain people are not required to file tax returns if you didn't earn enough money or you receive public benefits like SSI or VA benefits. The IRS will be issuing shortly checks or direct deposits to SSI and VA benefit holders. So just hang on. You should be receiving those within the next couple of weeks. Now, if you didn't file your tax return for 18 or 19, you should certainly file as soon as possible. You need to file electronically. And then you should get your check within a few weeks afterwards. They are prioritizing individuals with lower adjusted gross income now for the paper check payments. So one reason you might not have received it is you are in the higher income bracket and they just haven't issued it yet. So they are issuing these in phases, starting with the people who had the lowest income first. Now, also, if you aren't required to file a tax return, but you don't receive Social Security or VA benefits, you are going to have to take some additional steps in order to get your check. And there is a tool on the IRS website. If you go to irs.gov/coronavirus, there's a non-filer tool. And if you didn't or were not required to file for 2018 or 2019, you must use this tool by December 31st of this year in order to get your stimulus payment this year.
And can we back up just a little bit? What are the general eligibility requirements? You talked about sort of phases of income. Is everybody entitled to one of these checks?
No, so there are a couple of eligibility requirements. One, you must have a work-eligible Social Security number. You also cannot be claimed as a dependent on another person's tax return, and you have to meet certain income eligibility requirements. So to get the full $1,200, if you're single or married filing separately, you can make up to $75,000 adjusted gross income. There's a phase out of the stimulus check until you reach a certain income, and then you're no longer eligible for it. So for single or married filing separately, if you make more than $99,000 adjusted gross income, you're not eligible for any of the check. Now, there is a tool on the Taxpayer Advocate website, which we'll link to, that you can determine your eligibility and see exactly how much you might receive. Dependents, if you have a dependent that is under the age of 17, you will also receive an additional $500 for that. But it's important that they also must have a work eligible Social Security number. Now, if you're married filing jointly, both you and your spouse must have a work eligible Social Security number. So if one of you has an ITIN, unfortunately, you are not eligible for the stimulus payment if you are married filing jointly, unless you're in the armed forces.
Can you explain what an ITIN is for those of us who don't know the tax lingo?
Yes. So an ITIN is an individual taxpayer identification number. And this is just a number that you receive from the IRS. And the only purpose of it is to allow you to file taxes. And the people who receive this are typically undocumented workers, and they are earning some income in the United States, and they report it to the IRS, and they pay taxes on this income. It doesn't, the ITIN doesn't allow you to work, but it does give you a way to file taxes and pay the taxes that you owe.
And did I hear you right that not only the ITIN holder, so they're not eligible for the stimulus check, but their partner, or if they filed jointly with somebody, that person also is not available?
Correct. So one thing you might want to look at and speak to your tax professional about is whether it makes sense to file married filing separately. For example, if you haven't filed for 2019 yet. There are disadvantages to married filing separately. You aren't eligible for certain credits. If you receive premium tax credit assistance for like Covered California, you're not eligible for that premium assistance if you're married filing separately. So you would want to basically run the numbers and see if it makes sense for you to married filing separately. Now, if you've already filed for 19 jointly, the economic impact payment is actually a advance on a tax credit for 2020. So if your situation changed, maybe you had a child this year, or you decide you want to file married filing separately to receive this benefit, you can do this on your 2020 tax return, and you'll receive a tax credit against any tax that you owe for your 2020 tax return.
So what if you owe prior taxes from 2018 or 19 or even before that? Will you still get a stimulus check?
Yes, you will receive the stimulus check if you owe back taxes. The only exception to owing money where you wouldn't receive the economic impact payment is if you owe back child support. But if you owe, if you have a defaulted student loan and if you owe the state tax agencies, none of that will actually prevent you from receiving the economic impact payment. And another related point is that this will not affect your eligibility for any income-based assistance like Section 8, Medicare or Medi-Cal, food stamps. This is not considered income for those purposes. It's just a tax refund. So you do not have to report the economic impact payment to the various income-based public benefits.
Can you talk a little bit about how the IRS is handling this? I imagine it's got to be a lot of work, and I assume they're also sheltering in place and not necessarily going into the office. How have you viewed their response?
So the IRS has really mobilized. I believe I read about 44% of their workforce is actually work from home, and they have done a lot very quickly, including getting a tool called Get My Payment where you can enter direct deposit information, developing this non-filer tool, putting out lots of guidance in a very short time when many of their employees are not able to work. So while there have been some glitches with their tools, like the Get My Payment tool, they are updating it every day to allow more people to use it. So in the circumstances, I think their response has been great, and they are doing everything they can to get the payments to the people who need it most, and as quickly as they can.
You mentioned a Get My Payment tool. So let's say I'm one of the people who hasn't received my check yet, and I need the money. I've stopped working. How do I get in touch with the IRS? Is that possible to do right now?
No, so their call centers are all closed, and if you go on their website, it specifically says, please do not call us about the economic impact payment. But if you go to the irs.gov/coronavirus, there is a tool called Get My Payment where you can put in your income or your social security, your birthday, your address. You also will need information from either your 2019 or your 2018 if you haven't filed 19. You'll need your adjusted gross income, and it will tell you if your payment has been issued or not. And for example, for myself, I didn't have direct deposit information on my return. So I was able to go in and add my direct deposit information so that they would direct deposit the payment instead of needing to wait on a check. Now, you can't change your direct deposit information if you, for example, have changed banks in the past recently. But you can enter in direct deposit information if you hadn't previously provided it to the IRS.
So, what other services are happening with the IRS or not happening, as the case may be? New audits, other things like setting up automatic payments for a debt you may owe the IRS. Can you still handle those types of tasks?
So, like I said, much of the IRS is closed, and that includes all of their call centers, and that's why you really can't reach them. Earlier this week, the IRS actually called for a lot of employees to return to the office. They are offering incentive pay for these workers they saw the mission critical workers to return to the office to facilitate the tax filing season and reopen some of the call centers. So hopefully you should be able to reach them shortly. But they have issued something called the People First Initiative, and this came into effect on March 25th of 2020. And they have stopped all new collection activity, most collection activity like new liens and levies. If you were in an installment agreement, they have deferred those payments until July 15th, 2020. They also are not initiating new audits. Now, if you are currently in the midst of an audit, that is continuing to happen, but they aren't initiating new audits at this time. Unfortunately, the paper returns are not being processed. So if you do need to file your return, your best bet is to e-file. But they are slowly reopening, and they are going to prioritize identity verification services, because this has been a big barrier to taxpayers whose refund were frozen because their return for whatever reason was flagged for additional identity verification. And in most situations, in a normal year, you would be able to call the IRS and provide this information or make an appointment to go into one of their taxpayer assistance centers. There is also an online tool, but many people can't use this because of the strict identity verification. Like, you need to have a phone in your own name. So they have indicated they will be prioritizing opening that line so people can call in, verify their identity so they can get this refunds that are tied up that they really need at this point.
I understand you recently joined UC Hastings as the director of our Low-Income Taxpayer Clinic. Can you tell us a bit about your work in that clinic?
Yeah, so we provide pro bono representation to low-income taxpayers who have a tax controversy with the IRS. So, for example, if you owe back taxes and you need help with payment arrangements, you're being audited, you have federal tax litigation, lots of tax controversy issues we can help with. And if you qualify for our services, it's free. So, for an example of the income guidelines for a household of 4, you can make no more than $65,500 a year. Now, in the Bay Area, that is a very little amount, but if you do meet those income guidelines, we can certainly help you. We do receive some funding from the federal government, but we do our own analysis of cases and decide which cases that we can accept. And we will have students that are going to be helping with the cases as well. The clinic class starts in fall 2020. So we're really excited to give students the opportunity to really work with these taxpayers, learn hands-on what it means to actually be a tax attorney, get direct contact with the IRS and with clients, and make a huge impact in their lives. I mean, I had a client recently who owed about $40,000 to the IRS and about $8,000 to the California Franchise Tax Board. We were able to settle that debt. She paid a total of $1 to the IRS, and the debt was completely forgiven for her. So you can imagine someone who's on a fixed Social Security income, the huge impact that we have on a client's life.
It sounds like an amazing opportunity, especially during the pandemic, to do some real good work that will actually help people. Um, Speaking of working during the pandemic, how has the work in the clinic changed for you since the shutdown started?
So we're still continuing to help clients as we can. A little bit of that is impacted by our inability to contact the IRS to get information about the case. But if their case was in a certain department, like if it was with appeals or with tax court, those employees are still working. So we are able to do new intakes and provide full services to clients. We are receiving a huge volume of phone calls at this time because people can't reach the IRS. They are finding our information and calling us. So we are providing just on the phone advice about what their options are, about the economic impact payment, because people, they're concerned. They owe back taxes. They're afraid the IRS is going to, empty out their bank account when they really need the funds that are in there. So we are still providing both full scope and just general advice to people over the phone who call.
Are there other tools and resources that you could share for people looking for assistance and support? For example, I understand that there are tax clinics like yours throughout the country. Could you share some of that information?
Yeah, so your best bet would be go to the Taxpayer Advocate Service website, and that's taxpayeradvocate.irs.gov. And you can find a listing of all the low-income taxpayer clinics in the country. There are 3 in San Francisco alone. There are other tools. I would go to irs.gov/coronavirus. There's lots of good information that they are constantly updating. Also, if you have a franchise tax board issue, you can also go to their website and look for information there. But my first stop would be the Taxpayer Advocate Service website. They in addition to listing all of the clinics, they have information about the economic impact payment, what steps you need to take, some good videos as well, and they're an excellent resource.
Great. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to share some of your knowledge and expertise with us today, Professor Spivey.
For more information and additional resources related to this episode, please visit our website at www.uchastings.edu/pandemic.
And while you're there, you can check out all the episodes in this series. Thanks for listening.